So we've spent some time now with the 2018 Nissan Leaf, and I wanted to give you just some quick information on my driving experience so far. It's a very comfortable car to drive. We've been in and out of some rain and sun today here in the Gatineau area of Quebec. We've left Ottawa, went for a drive, went on some tours. I'm very happy with the ride quality of this car. We actually took it through some very bumpy, small side roads that were gravel even. And the fit and finish on these are brand new cars from Nissan factory. And there's no squeaks, no rattles, nothing jarring around. That's from a workmanship or materials perspective. So I was quite surprised actually a little bit, because we went on some very jarring roads that I thought for sure I was going to hear a lot more noise than I have. This car is exceptionally quiet. In fact, Nissan has made it 30% quieter than the outgoing Leaf model. And it's targeted at that nice sweet spot. It's got a 40 kilowatt hour battery, which will give you up to 242 kilometer range, which is more than adequate for the majority of features that majority of range that people need on a daily basis. I've been driving exclusively with the e-pedal. I've touched the brake only a couple of times in a day and a half of driving. It really it's very intuitive. It works very well, and it doesn't take you long at all to get used to the e-pedal and the braking that it provides. It does turn on the rear lights when it hits 0.2 G of a deceleration, and when you stop, it keeps those brake lights on. So it's a very nice experience. It's the i3, when I drove it, it was harder, and some of the others are different feels. This is a very comfortable feel, and that's what Nissan wants to give drivers with the 2018 Leaf, is that safe, secure, and comfortable feeling in driving an everyday use electric vehicle. It's a front-wheel drive vehicle. The motor is the same as the outgoing Leaf, but it's got more power going to the motor, to the AC motor. So it gives you 110 kilowatts of power, which is up about 30% from the outgoing model. Now, obviously, with higher output from the inverter, it's a smaller inverter if I remember correctly, but it provides more output, and it's a liquid cooled, the inverter. You get more horsepower, so 147 horsepower rating and 236 foot-pounds of torque. That's 176 newton meters for our metric friends. That's up 26% from the previous gen because of the new inverter. And of course, like all EVs, they harness regenerative power for braking and for putting energy back into the batteries. Now, Nissan's strategy moving forward, especially from not just from electrification, but certainly from a market perspective, is their three-pillar strategy, which is made up of Nissan Power, Nissan Intelligent Power, Nissan Intelligent Driving, and Nissan Intelligent Integration. Now, when we bring that into the Leaf framework, the Intelligent Power, obviously, as I mentioned, is with the higher horsepower rating and torque rating from the motor that puts out the higher output. Intelligent driving, of course, is much more tech in this car. So you've seen videos and seen things about ProPilot. I mentioned the e-pedal there for a sec. These are a lot more tech features in a car that's in the subcompact price and marketplace. There's a lot of value in this car. Of course, they have things like intelligent lane departure, auto high beam assist, intelligent emergency braking, which of course is going to be a standard, I'm sure, in the next few years on everything. And that also it recognizes pedestrians and bicycles too, so some smaller objects. It's got a rear backup camera and rear cross-traffic alert.
Nissan's improved the looks of the 2018 Leaf with an all-new aerodynamic design that gives a 0.28 drag coefficient to slip through the air. In keeping with Nissan's design language, the 2018 Nissan Leaf also includes the V-Motion grille, the floating roofline, and the boomerang lamp signature taillights, along with enhanced brand symbols throughout the vehicle. I think Nissan's done a really good job of improving the looks and the design of the new 2018 Leaf. I mean, it is a real-use, high-volume car for them that's shipped around the world, and still within the subcompact framework of being a real 5-seater with a good-sized trunk. The curb weight is at 3,468 pounds. That's about 110 pounds less than the outgoing Leaf. It's 1.4 inches longer and fractionally wider and taller than that previous generation as well. The wheelbase is at 106.3 inches, and it runs front strut and rear torsion bar suspension. Now, the body torsion stiffness has been increased by 15%, and there's been a 5 millimeter change to the center of gravity, due, I believe, to the larger battery pack.
And with that Nissan Intelligent integration comes mobile phone support. So you can use your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto devices to connect and get all the functionality through your infotainment system, which is a 7-inch infotainment screen here in the Nissan Leaf. They also have an app, which is their Nissan eConnect app, which will allow you to do things like preheating, pre-cooling, checking the charge status of your battery, start charging, stop charging, all kinds of different features, up to premium features like valet mode. If you can set a speed limit, so if somebody's driving the car faster than you want, you'll get a message. If you loan the Leaf to your kids and you don't want them to go out to a certain geography area, out of a certain area, it will give you an email if they pass those boundaries and so forth. So there's a lot of different things you can do with the app. Now, also within that intelligent integration is the vehicle to grid technology, or the V2G that Nissan claims. What that means is that you can use your Leaf with a proper machine, proper technology, to send power back to your house or to other objects, street lamps, things like that. These are technologies that are being deployed in Japan already. They've sold thousands of these units. They're not coming to North America just yet, but we do anticipate that they will come in the future at some point. Don't know when and what kind of manner. But it's pretty cool, and that's one of the reasons that Nissan has stuck with the CHAdeMO fast charging standard, is because it does give them bi-directional charging. And they did that for a reason, because it supports the vehicle to grid technology. Now, Leaf stands for Leading Environmentally Friendly Affordable Family Car. It's a lot of letters, but that's what the Leaf stands for and originally came out. And they designed the Leaf to be a real-use, high-volume, more mass-market attainable vehicle. And it's certainly showing that self in the second-generation Leaf, because they've come out with a nicer package, obviously nicer looks, still based on the older Gen 1 platform from a size perspective. But you know, it's got more appointments in the interior. I think it's a little nicer interior. Certainly the looks they've streamlined. They've standardized on the V-Motion grille, the boomerang tail lights, to keep it within that Nissan family. And they still offer the Nissan Leaf at a very attractable price. In fact, the new 2018 Leaf is just slightly under than the outgoing Leaf price from 2017. So it's pretty good with the refresh that it gives you, with a bigger battery and all the different features. And it is fun to drive. As I mentioned at the top, I've been driving the 2018 Leaf for about a day and a half now, really getting comfortable with it. It's very comfortable to drive. All the controls are very easy. I mean, I know people say there's a lot of buttons. There's over 50 buttons in this vehicle for controls. But you know, it's like anything. Once you learn what the functionality, it becomes intuitive and second nature to you over time. So with any cars, I mean, Cadillacs and some of the other higher-end cars have even more buttons, and some have less, like, of course, the Tesla Model 3, which has one button only. So it's really not a problem. I think once you drive the car, like anything, you learn it, it'll be intuitive as far as how you get to certain screens in the menu and what buttons activate what features and what functions. Now, acceleration in this car with the more power going to the AC motor gives you 0 to 100 kilometer time in 7.9 seconds, which is about 15% quicker than the outgoing Leaf.
The new Leaf also comes with active ride control for more precise cornering, reducing vibration while simultaneously improving ride quality and steering control.
Now, the range at this 40 kilowatt hour battery will satisfy a large majority of users. And if you're in that category of needing something to get, 60, 70 kilometers, 40 miles a day or so in driving range with some longer trips planned, this car is more than capable of doing it. I wouldn't hesitate to take this car on a longer trip, even if it surpasses 2 or 3 DC fast chargers. I think most EVers, when you get into that battery electric only type of format vehicle, the trip is your experience. So it's not necessarily just getting from point A to point B in the fastest method that's available, but it's experiencing the trip as well. And I find that you tend to slow down the pace a little bit when you're in an EV, and that lowers your stress and it makes you feel a little bit better driving. And I'm sure Tesla owners and everybody that's got an EV can attribute to that. Some like them for the performance and the handling, of course. Some they want the sports car type functions. But as a practical value add car that the Nissan Leaf is, I think it hits all those buttons very well. Now, in the ProPilot Assist function, I tested that on some motorways. It's not really recommended for two-lane highway use. I did do it a little bit on that. It does work. Again, it's based on a single camera system and a radar system up front. It sees what you can see. So if it's raining, it doesn't work very well. In fact, it doesn't work. It won't engage. If it's covered up, if it's snowy and the roads you can't see the lines, it doesn't really do much for you from that perspective. But I drove it yesterday in nicer weather for a bit, and it worked very well. There's no boomer, there's no ping-ponging back and forth in the lane. ProPilot's very good at center keeping the lane, riding the turns as well. Some very good curves that it can navigate. Again, it's a driver assist, so you need to keep your hand on the wheel or at least engage with it when it comes up to remind you to touch the wheel. Now, within the car, assisting ProPilot is the front-facing camera above the rear view mirror. Of course, again, it's what you can see. It's a visual-based system along with the front radar. That's what ProPilot uses. The car itself has 5 cameras. So you've got the front-facing one, you've got 2 on the side, 1 on each side mirror, 1 in the front of the car for parking assistance, and 1 on the rear, of course, for parking assistance for when you're backing up to get your rear camera. These in the SL trim, this is all these cameras, especially the side ones, give you a 360 view, as they call it. It maps in pretty nice, and I'm sure that you've seen elements of that in brochures and previous cars. ProPilot is rated as a level 2 autonomy for driver assist, and of course it encompasses 3 main types of systems within the car: steering assist, lane keeping assist, and of course adaptive or intelligent cruise control, ICC as they call it. It even has the ability to slow down on traffic and stop if you've had ProPilot engage. So if you're in the highway and you get into a stop and go situation, that happens a lot, we all know that. The car will actually slow down, stop, and if it's within 3 seconds, it'll start moving forward again. If not, then you just either press the ProPilot button or tap the accelerate pedal, and you'll start going again, all in ProPilot mode, so it won't disengage. Now, obviously, if it doesn't see lanes or some weather comes in or something, that's a different story. But while in normal operating, it'll work very, very well. Now, e-pedal is a great, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great feature on this car. It took me literally a couple of minutes just to get the feel of it, and I've been pretty well driving 99% of the time just with e-pedal. It combines regenerative and mechanical braking. Now, it's mainly regenerative braking. It does use the mechanical brakes very little, and it primarily uses those for stopping, for full stopping and for holds. It'll hold on a 30% grade up or down slope, and it engages the mechanical brakes for that. It doesn't add any additional wear to those friction brakes. So I was asking some people who are some Leaf owners who came out to this event yesterday about brake wear, and the one guy just said he's got over 80,000 kilometers and he hasn't changed his brake pads yet on his discs, on his disc brakes. So the Leafs do very well from a low maintenance perspective. Now, e-pedal uses regenerative braking to smoothly slow you down and come to a stop. And again, the faster you are, the more you let off the pedal, the harder, the more G's will be thrown to stopping you. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it activates the rear brake lights. Within the Nissan Leaf, there's 6 driving modes. You've got your D mode for your regular driving, gives you that coasting experience with very minimal regen. You've got your B mode, so when you let off, you got more intense regenerative braking to help you brake. And you've got your e-pedal, as I mentioned, which is something you can throttle back and forth, more intense, less intense. It's a very smooth transition, very smooth operation on the e-pedal. Of course, you can put the Eco button on, and then that doubles the amount of driving modes to 6. You can have an Eco D, an Eco B, and an Eco e-pedal. What the Eco mode does is it limits the amount of output that the inverter will give to the motor to drive, so you can save a little battery and save some power. You have to press the pedal a little farther to get going a little faster, but it's great for if you want to conserve some energy and utilize that feature. One thing I like that Nissan's done with the 2018 Leaf is include a level 2 charger with the car. So it has an adapter, or it has a plug at the end of it that's a 4-15P NEMA plug, which will give you a 32 amp of service from a level 2 capacity perspective. So if you don't have that plug, you can run a plug to your garage. You just simply use this unit to level 2 charge your vehicle in about 7.5 hours from empty. Most people, of course, don't take it right to zero when they charge it, so within 3 to 4 hours on a normal setting and off-peak times, you'll be able to recharge your Leaf to full capacity. That's a nice little thing, because if you don't feel like going out and getting a basic charger, if that's all you wanted, then the car comes with one. And that's standard in Canada. It's different in some of the other parts of the world, in the US and Europe, but in Canada, that level 2, level 1, level 2 SE, EVSE is standard with all trim levels of the Leaf.
Now, on the subject of charging and batteries, the new battery design of the 2018 Nissan Leaf adds energy storage capacity without increasing the size. As I mentioned earlier, the battery pack occupies the exact same dimensions as that of the previous generation Leaf. The individual cell structure of the laminated lithium-ion battery cells have been improved, representing a 67% increase in energy density versus the original 2010 Leaf model. Now, another key engineering improvement for the lithium-ion battery pack is the use of enhanced electrode materials with revised chemistry. And this results in a higher power density while contributing to greater battery durability upon charge and discharge. The increased battery pack in the 2018 Nissan Leaf provides 151 miles of EPA-rated range, or 242 kilometers. Acceleration is brisk at 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 7.9 seconds, which is about 15% quicker than the previous model. The 2018 Leaf should satisfy the needs for the majority of typical owners, which only drive about 40 to 50 miles a day or 60 to 70 kilometers per day. For the North American market, Nissan offers the Leaf in 3 trim packages: the S, the SV, and the SL. All Nissan Leafs include comprehensive warranties, which cover the battery for 8-year, 160,000 kilometers or 100,000 miles. The base Model S includes a 6.6 kilowatt onboard charger, e-pedal, a Level 1, Level 2 EVSC, Chatamo quick charge port, intelligent emergency braking, rear view monitor, heated front and rear seats, heated steering wheel, and resistive battery heater, a heat pump, LED headlights and LED daytime running lights, Nissan's intelligent key, and 16-inch alloy wheels. The mid-level SV trim, priced at $39,598, adds Nissan Connect navigation system with 7-inch touchscreen, support for the EV telematics application, integration with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, Sirius XM radio, Pro Pilot Assist, including intelligent cruise control and steering assist, blind spot warning, rear cross traffic alert, and upgrade to 17-inch alloy wheels.
And the third trim model of the 2018 Nissan Leaf is the SL model. That gets everything that I mentioned before, and it adds leather seating. It's got some suede Alcantara trim, which looks very nice. It's got intelligent around view 360 camera, so you get those extra cameras so you can see when you get close to a curb and backing into parking spots. It's a really nice, cool feature to help you get into those areas. It's got the upgraded Bose 7-speaker with subwoofer stereo system. Now, I know that some people don't like having that subwoofer in the back, and they can see it kind of protrudes in there. I don't really think it takes away anything from cargo capacity. It's got a pretty good hatch area there and with a deep well for good cargo. It's 63 inches if you fold the back seats down to the back. Here on our reviews and overviews, we like to take a tape measure, and I did that earlier. So my understanding is you can get a full bike in here without having to take a wheel off and lie it flat on there and be able to move a bike around. And also with the SL trim, you get heated outside mirrors, which again is great for our Canadian winters with integrated turn signals. So really nice packages on the SL. Now, to further help with pricing, especially here in Canada, we've got 3 provinces that offer rebates and incentives. We've got British Columbia, Quebec, and Ontario. British Columbia, you can get up to $5,000 for this as an incentive for the Leaf. In Quebec, you get $8,000. In Ontario, we still have, knock on wood, and a whopping $14,000 rebate that's available on the Leaf. So when you factor that in, you can get from a Canadian pricing perspective in Ontario, you can get into a 2018 SL Nissan Leaf, which is a fully loaded trim package with tax in and your freight and PDI and all your other fees that are available that are added onto your bill when you buy a car, less your rebate, for just around $35,000 Canadian. So that's a pretty attractive price point. We're still not 100% at cost parity to other vehicles in this size class, but we're much closer in that threshold, and I think you get a lot of value for that price point. So what's my overall impression of the 2018 Nissan Leaf? Well, I like it. Obviously, you folks know that I've purchased one, so it's been great to be able to experience driving it for a couple of days before even getting my car, which is going to be probably June by the looks of it now. Nissan's demand is just going through the roof. They are way overselling these cars and not being able to keep up with production from both a North American and global standpoint. So I can see why. To summarize this car, it's got great fit and finish. It's got good features and value for the price. Um, as always, it's got that EV smile, as we like to say. When you put your foot on the accelerator, you will go with the torque that this car has. It's got versatility with fold-down seats, with the carrying capacity, with all the driving tools and features that it has. So it can handle a lot of needs. And I'm very, very satisfied with the build quality of this car. That's really one thing that I wanted to experience, is driving around rough areas and all throws in and out small streets and see what it performed like. It's performed admirably. So, you know, there's a lot of reviews on the internet. I encourage you to watch some more. I didn't want to go and do a too detailed review on this car. I kind of wanted to give you more of my impressions and my thoughts after driving it for a couple of days. I want to thank Nissan Canada for inviting us up to join them. Unfortunately, Trevor couldn't make this event, so I came for our show, for the EV Revolution show. I want to thank them for their hospitality. It's been we've had some really great chances to network and talk to people within the auto industry here in Canada about their thoughts on the Nissan Leaf, and everybody's got a pretty similar opinion, that they're very impressed with the car and what you get as a value for the price and performance of this vehicle. So if you're on the edge and not sure from an EV perspective, if you're waiting for your Model 3 reservation and you want your Model 3, don't cancel your reservation. You do what you have to do for your needs. But if you are in the market looking for an EV now, I would highly recommend the 2018 Nissan Leaf. It's got more than adequate range for most of your needs. It does have the capacity to go longer distances should you choose. You just have to follow the of course, recommended charging, and know that the charging will slow down after a few successive rapid chargers. If you're looking for long distance traveling and multiple rapid chargers every day, like 3, 4, 5, you want to go, you may think twice about the Nissan Leaf, because you'll be able to do it. It's just going to take you a lot longer than maybe some of the other EVs out there. But for a good all-purpose family car, or single-person car, or second car or primary car, Nissan Leaf, I would give this a 9 out of 10. I rate it really, really high. All right, I'm here with our favorite Nissan Canada person, Francois Lefebvre. If I pronounce that correct, I always seem to muck it up. Now, we met Francois at the Canadian International Auto Show this past February in Toronto, and he was nice enough to give us some information. So he's here at the Nissan event in Ottawa, where we're getting a nice big press invite and look at the Nissan Leaf, and there will be more coming tomorrow. But I had a few questions, a little bit more high level from a Nissan perspective, and I wanted to kind of share these with our viewers and get your responses. So, you know, we've talked about it on our shows that Nissan was the first out of the gate really for a true mass market vehicle from a battery all-electric perspective, for everyday use, especially not non-commercial use. Now, with the Leaf, Nissan has become the worldwide leader in battery electric vehicles, with over 310,000 sold, and that includes the NV200 when you lump that into the mix from a global perspective. And this is slightly ahead of Tesla's. I mean, we know Tesla's cranking the Model 3s out now as we speak, so they'll catch up. And it's not really about numbers, but the leadership that Nissan has attained to date, what do you attribute that success and leadership to?
Well, the big aspect is history, right? You were talking about we were the first one to bring out an EV mass market, and that was back in 2010. Really, we started in 1947, right?
Yeah,
So it's
post-war.
and post-war, exactly, when gas was very, very scarce in Japan.
I think that's with the Tama, if I got that right?
Exactly, yeah. Tama. And this was the start, right? We didn't stop there afterwards when gas, there was no oil issues in Japan. Nissan continued. We had over 20 production units and prototype afterwards, really to come up to the car that we mass produced. And really, it's about timing, right? In 2010 was the right timing globally to launch a mass market electric car, and we had the experience and history to be ready for that. So, and then that's one aspect, and the market needs to be ready for that as well. We all know that the government is implicated, and charging infrastructure. There's a lot of aspect to it. So 2010 was the right time, and obviously to be the first as well. So you don't want to wait too long as well. But that timing was perfect.
Absolutely. And this past experience, how has that influenced the future of Nissan's electrification strategy? And what can we expect to see from that, and within what kind of timeframes?
Yeah, question comes at a perfect time because usually it's difficult to comment on a future plan in a lot of details. But what we can do is we launch our midterm plan, so from fiscal year 18 to 22 last month, so late last month. So it's quite fresh. It's really good to be talking about this. So first thing that's relevant to EV specifically is the fact that we're planning to launch 8 fully electric vehicles in that time frame. And then again, that's globally. The second aspect of it is to launch a global crossover vehicle.
I think the IMX is kind of the concept of that, is that correct?
No, exactly. It's the inspiration. The IMX is the inspiration for it, absolutely, in terms of, and again, that's a new platform as well that we're going to use. And the third one, which is quite exciting as well, is Infinity will launch battery electric vehicles as well in fiscal year 21. So that's coming. So those are big news, and it just again proves that Nissan is there in the alliance. So Renault.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi are. We are working together and really developing the market globally on the EV side. And looking at every single market individually and say, well, what's the opportunity? So we're there for the long run. This is not something that we're going to go away. We're just developing.
Excellent. Now, obviously, with very strong current and projected global and national sale numbers, the 2018 Leaf is evolutionary as opposed to revolutionary. It certainly is a step up, and will certainly spur continued EV adoption and market growth. How do you see this growth from a Canadian perspective? Because a lot of reporting we see are U.S. and Europe and worldwide numbers. We don't really get a lot of independent numbers and news on a Canadian front. And of course, Trevor and I are both Canadian doing this show. So I'd like to get your comments on what you see from an adoption perspective from here in our neck of the woods.
Well, if we look at the numbers, they're quite exciting. We're just looking at 2017. And again, a side note on that, in 2017, for 6 months, we were not able to sell the Nissan Leaf because we were in model year transition between the Gen 1 and Gen 2. And even with us sort of half, in the picture, there was a growth of 68% in BEV in 2017, 120% in Ontario, these are big numbers, right? And at the end of the day, for example, Quebec passed the 2% mark in terms of overall BEV versus the overall volume in Quebec, and I think the overall volume in Canada passed that 1% mark. So yes, just by those last two comments, the numbers are small, but they're growing extremely quickly. So that's exciting for us, and that was 2017. And if you look at the growth right now, we had our best month ever last month with 423 vehicles. The last best month ever for the Leaf was 179. So that's how the demand is there, the excitement is there, and that's for not only us but the other EVs as well. So there's a lot of demand and growth, I think, for 18 and moving forward, because we're going to see a lot more infrastructure being built in provinces, and this will again push awareness. We're going to see a lot more cars as well being launched. So that's all these factors will trigger growth, and right now we're right into it.
Good numbers from Canadian perspective. I mean, the last March scorecard from Inside EVs, which is a site that we keep track of, I think reported about 1,500 Leafs, and that's just a U.S. card that they track. So knowing that around half of that, in addition to what they reported from U.S., is Canadian is an astounding feat, showing that we're growing up. Finally, as part of a potential car buyer's hesitation to get into an all-electric vehicle, it's based on concerns of lack of fast charging, right? And we've talked about this a lot, even on our show, when needed for beyond vehicle driving range. Now, we know that more and more charging stations are being built every year around the world. and around the globe. Now, from a Canadian perspective, what's Nissan Canada doing to help grow the EV fast charging infrastructure? Are they doing anything?
Yeah, well, last year what we did, we actually sponsored a project with Flow in Ontario, and that was 25 fast charger in Ontario. And in the past as well, we were the first one to sponsor the electric circuit in Quebec by installing 26 of them. Again, we want to participate, and we did participate, but truly our focus is really on the vehicle and vehicle sales and bringing cars to Canada. But yeah, in the past, we sponsored these project, but truly moving forward, we see that there's so much momentum. That there's a private sector, provincial government really getting involved, which is quite exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Yeah, we don't expect you to build your own supercharging network as an analogy, but it's good to see that you are participating in some of those programs and pushing the government and utilizing all the incentives. So, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you answering these high-level questions for me. Appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure. Anytime.
All right, at the Nissan event, I'm here with Owen Tunis. He's the manager of e-powertrain tech affairs and testing at Nissan USA, based in Sacramento. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome to Canada, and thanks for taking the time to come to meet with me and come to this event as well. Got a few questions, a little bit more technical, that I wanted to ask you, Owen. Firstly, with the current pricing, if we take a step back, with the current pricing model of the 2018 Leaf, how would you summarize its value proposition as a competitive battery electric vehicle?
Sure. So the idea in model year 18 Leaf is to carry on what we've done in the previous vehicle, which is really exactly focusing on that value proposition. So we start from listening with our existing customers and the things that were important to them and just giving them more at a similar price level. So we offer more range, more power, more feature, but the pricing is pretty stable. So relative to the other vehicles, which are similarly priced, we're very competitive in terms of our range and output levels.
Excellent. Now, we understand, we talk a lot about it on the show, that the new 40 kilowatt hour pack in the 2018 Leaf retains the same number of cells as in the 30 kilowatt hour pack at 192 cells. The packaging has been made more efficient in the 40 kilowatt hour pack, but I have to say all that because I get comments. You didn't say it right. In the new pack, by providing 8 cells per module versus 4 cells per module as in the prior pack. This helps to maintain a similar physical size and footprint as the prior pack, while aiding in increasing energy density. That's how you can get more. So can you provide any more information on what other changes to this new pack and drive system have been made in order to help increase energy density and power?
Sure. So again, starting from that existing platform where we started, we don't want to impinge upon the cabin space. Right. So that's important for us to keep that same footprint within the vehicle, which is where we want to stay within that shape. The items that you mentioned about the cells, it is still the same number of cells, but we have 8 cells per module instead of 4. But the cells themselves are a little bit thicker, about 0.9 millimeters thicker, which allows for more material to store more energy. But it's also done with a chemistry change as well. So those two items put together is what allows for an increase in energy storage within the same physical size.
Okay, great. And can you explain why passive thermal management methods? I mean, we get a lot of emails and a lot of comments, and there's a lot of stuff out there about active thermal versus passive, and Nissan seems to be kind of a little bit behind the ball on that. But why passive thermal management were maintained on the 2018 Leaf when most other manufacturers are deploying active cooling and heating techniques?
Sure. So, for example, we have about 300,000, more than 300,000 vehicles in the market at this point. So we have a fairly good reference point in terms of how the cars are actually used and how customers are actually used and how much fast charging they do, the type of trip lengths they do. And given the context of that, we're fairly comfortable with having the passive cooling system. The cells themselves keep a relatively uniform, they have very good thermal stability within the cell itself. So a passive cooling system is very effective mechanism for that, while maximizing the amount of available space, stuffing it with batteries rather than other things, and importantly keeping the cost at a reasonable level, because we want to strike that right balance of value for price, performance, and range.
It's all about balance. I totally understand. What else would you say then on the topic of batteries to those concerned about doing long road trips involving multiple fast charging? Obviously, some information that's come up about successive DC fast charging, and as well to those people located in either more hot or more cold climates.
Sure. So as I said before, the majority of case of use is people don't use fast charging all that much. I think it's something like 99% use fast charging once or less per day. So we're talking about a relatively small portion of the driving that's done. We do have limits on the battery. So after multiple fast charges in a day, we don't want the battery temperature to get too high, so we do dial back the current on the battery, and that is intended to protect the battery for the long term. So that's as intended. It's not unusual to dial back current in that way. That's no others do that as well. As to using the car for a long distance trip, again, it's intended to be using for daily purposes. It can do those other drive cycles, but depending upon the conditions, it may not be as convenient as perhaps another traditional vehicle might be. And the climate, as far as the battery itself goes, from either hot or cold, the battery will take care of itself. It'll live within its own comfortable zone, and will manage the battery temperature through vehicle controls.
Okay, great. Well, it's pretty similar to a lot of information that we've been saying to folks on the shows as well. But Nissan has targeted the Leaf at a fairly new element within the AEV community to spur adoption, to give a very value-priced battery electric vehicle with a lot of features. So obviously, you're going to come out with more models. We talked to Francois a little earlier about some of the visioning that Nissan's going after. So it's all good. So thank you very much, Owen, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it. Enjoy the car.